Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Ser Ezra, the Watchful. Welcome back to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Today we are into the prologue of A Storm of Swords.
Yeah, wow. Ez, you know, when we first started this podcast, we were like trying to figure out what we wanted to do and all this stuff. And we were like, man, I don't know. I feel like it's just going to take forever to get through all these books. And I was like, yeah, I think that's kind of the point. Like that way we have something to talk about for the next like 7 years.
Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah. Let's actually talk about that for a second, Matt, because I was thinking about this. It is. It's a new book, and I feel I'm happy to be in this. This is the one we've been waiting for. This is a really exciting book. It's the best. People consider it the best. A lot of people also like Dance as well. It's just I think people like Dance because it leaves a lot of those storylines unfinished that you can go and pick it up right there. It's okay. Where does it go to? But so much is hinted at here. And there's so many little prophecy tie-ins that Matt and I speculate, and we sometimes even use the show to say, hey, these things are connecting much further on, down the line. And there are things in this book that still matter. So, a Storm of Swords is excellent. And going back through it is, I've been trying to, read ahead and get a little refresher, and it's fun. It's honestly a lot of fun, and it's just cool to see that we're here and we're still talking House of the Dragons coming out. All these fun things are happening. We got George still talking about stuff. Winds of Winter is closer today than it was yesterday, and that may be like a joke, but it's also true. So
so I ran this poll over on our YouTube just like a little over just 2 months ago. Said, what's your favorite Song of Ice and Fire book? And A Storm of Swords dominated the charts, not even remotely close. So Storm of Swords came in first at 45%.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite A Song of Ice and Fire book? 45% said A Storm of Swords. That's crazy. So then following that was A Dance of Dragons, then A Feast for Crows, then A Clash of Kings, then A Game of Thrones. Kind of interesting. Not my preferred order. What's yours? How do you rank the 5 books?
Well, A Feast for Crows is awesome. I do love A Feast for Crows. Clash of Kings is not necessarily that for me is at the bottom, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, I just don't. It was a great follow-up, but I feel like it keeps you in it, and there's still a lot of intrigue and stuff that's going ups and downs, and the roller coaster ride is there. Storm of Swords is where I think we all caught the same fever that George caught, and we get taken away in it. So for me, that one probably is this is at the top of my list. It's either A Storm of Swords 1 or Feast for Crows 1. I go back and forth on them actually. Yeah. And then this is so crazy, but then A Dance with Dragons, because I'm at like when I read it, I went back and actually just did a couple point of view read throughs again with Danny's stuff. And just it's kind of, I don't know. It's just super intriguing to think about where it's going to go. And I think that's probably what it is for me, is that like, I'm always thinking about what's next in the story. And so A Feast for Crows as well. Some of those storylines in there, and you have to that was a book, right, that I believe was split into 2. And so, yeah, there's just a lot. That's where the story is kind of at. A Game of Thrones is above A Clash of Kings, and Clash of Kings is probably my bottom.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think most people, well, just looking at this, yeah, a lot of people have Dance with Dragons number 2. I know just in talking to our good buddy Sir Jimmy, that's where he's sort of at 2. Same thing as he has Dance. And I've talked about this as well. I don't know. I guess I have a different take here. So A Storm of Swords is my number 1.
Okay.
Because it's just so good. And for me, so much of it is the chapter we'll get into next time, which is Jaime 1, is the fact that in the show, right, you see Jaime Lannister way more than you do in the books. In the books, really, you don't really know Jaime all that much by the time we get to his first chapter. So then you dive into his first chapter, and it's like, I was like, what? Like, we get to read Jaime Lannister's point of view. And it was just so cool. And that to me is like the game changing, like everything before that is like A Clash of Kings and Game of Thrones, we still feel very similar. Everything post that is like I don't know, George just decided to start writing different. And then we start getting into Cersei chapters and getting into more sort of, I guess, villain chapters, and you get this other side of it. And we get to see like why Jaime's arc and learning like why he did what he did. It to me, it opens up every character is that much more interesting. And you begin to look at characters just beyond sort of black and white. So that's why I love A Storm of Swords. So I have A Storm of Swords at 1. I actually have a Game of Thrones at 2.
Okay.
And it's so much of it is just because I think it's just such a good, of all of like the books, some of the books I've ever read, the opening scene, I just love it. I love
memorable.
Like, I love like the first 5 chapters of that book, including the prologue, because you start out and you're in like the Night's Watch and who are these guys and what are they doing? And then they get attacked by and you're talking about a guy who is a knight, right? And what's his name? Waymar Royce, right? I mean, he's a knight and he's going up against this White Walker, and it's just what just happened. And then the next chapter, we find one of these Night's Watch members who we don't really know that much about, but has now run all the way south. Or not all the way south, but has run south of the wall, and he's being executed. And it's like, wait, what's going on?
What's
Right?
going on, dude?
Stark, and then we find dire wolves beyond the wall, and it's just I just love those first 5 chapters. I just love the whole thing. And then Jon goes to the wall, and wait, what's the deal about his mother? And Benjen is lost, and just so much about. I think it's just such an amazing setup to the series. Right. But I just love it. And then it ends obviously with Ned Stark, and it's like, oh my God, all hell just broke loose.
Right.
And then when Catelyn takes Tyrion, it's like, oh my God, what did you just do?
You're right. You're actually right. I think that's because we wouldn't get to all the other juiciness and like the richness of the rest of the story if we didn't have such a great hook, you know?
Yeah.
So we do have to give credit to the first book.
Yeah. And there's only 5 books. So, I mean, everyone's going to have them in just sort of different orders that they like. So, so I have a Game of Thrones at number 2. Then I have A Dance with Dragons. And just because, all the reasons everyone loves A Dance with Dragons, it's also like all the Jon stuff. And I think that's why like Feast for me, Feast I actually have as my least favorite book. And I think it's just because Feast and Dance are sort of split into 2. And I just sort of prefer the characters in Dance with Dragons more than I prefer the characters in A Feast for Crows. Especially because like Bran, is like not even in A Feast for Crows. So I love Bran's arc, and there's way more of it in Dance Dragons. So I think that's just if for no other reason. But really, some people love both. Some people like one or the other. That's just the side I'm on. So I have Feast at the bottom, then I have Clash as my second, as my I have it below Game of Thrones. I don't know what it is about Clash of Kings. I think it's just I love that we get to meet Stannis and Davos, but then there's some Theon chapters, and I'm just the Greyjoys. They just bore me. I don't know what it is. Every time I have to read about the Greyjoys, I just get so. They're just my least favorite characters. I know some people love them, and Euron's crazy.
Right, and that's when it will pick up, right? Is when Euron shows up and stuff. So, or when he gets more involved, if you will. But
I think some of it is also because like they're the first characters that feel outside of the story, even though Jon sort of is. He's like up at the wall, but so much of Jon's story, at least in a Game of Thrones and a Clash of Kings, involves what's going on in Westeros, whereas like Daenerys' story is so far separate that it's kind of its own thing. It's much more manageable in a Game of Thrones, where it's just this one character who's way over here, but where everyone's talking about her and why it's very important. And then you add in the Greyjoys in a Clash of Kings, and now they're like over here, and so it's like it gets kind of spread out more. And but obviously by Dance Dragons, it's all over the place. But it's just like initially, it's kind of like it feels like a side story, and I just don't care.
Yeah. I know.
But obviously the Battle of Blackwater, and there's a lot of great stuff in a Clash of Kings, but I just sort of it's my second least favorite, I guess. And then Feast is my least favorite. Yeah. Just because I prefer of the two, which was supposed to be one book. I think I'm much more on the Dance of Dragons side. So
yeah, it's cool.
So yeah, so we kind of line up a little here, but clearly Storm of Swords 45%.
People love it, man.
People love it.
Yeah, and it's such a great story, you know. So just as we get into this, before we started it, because just want to give you guys some context here. So it continues where A Clash of Kings ends, right? It's we had the War of the Five Kings of Westeros. Dany is strengthening her forces over in the east, and then you've got this threat of maybe others or like a wildling army, something's going on. But we have 12 different characters that we're going to follow, and then sort of 10 tell the majority of the story. Let me see here. And then we kind of pick up this is our prologue. Matt will read a summary here in a second for you, but it's Chet. We're starting up north, and it goes, I mean, again, it's we're stretched pretty far in terms of, we are far north. We're above the wall. We start there. We'll talk about the horn blowing, sounding 3 times. And then we go all the way back down to Dany. You know, we're stretched all the way across Essos, which is just great. You always think about Jon far north and Dany way over there, and it really, I don't know, it's just an immense, crazy
world.
Yeah, story.